It's going live right now.
Okay. Kevin, are you all set?
The only person I do not see is Commissioner Doug DeYoung.
Okay, yes, that's right.
Okay, we are live.
Okay, Kevin, you want to wait a few minutes or you want us to start? It's 2 o'clock.
Give me 30 seconds,
Okay,
please.
we are broadcasting live now.
And Michelle, I'm writing all the names down. Okay.
Hey, Doug. We're okay.
Check with their chairman, who's not on.
Okay, sounds good. I'll let him know. Yeah, if you'll double check to let him in, I think he got to the host menu.
Is it Doug DeYoung?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's coming in right now.
Okay,
Yeah, he's just coming in now,
You
Kevin.
should be all set. Thanks. Yep. Bye.
All right, so I think we're ready.
I think we're ready.
How about we have Commissioner Bunnick lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do roll call.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then we'll do the roll call. We'll go for an agenda, and we'll have the clerk of Leelanau County go first.
Commissioner Ansorgi,
Here.
Commissioner Rushton,
Present.
Chairman Bonnick,
Here.
Commissioner Wessel,
Here.
Commissioner Sudis-Little,
Here.
Commissioner Rettenbach,
Here.
Commissioner Lautner. Present, all present.
And now we'll have Grand Traverse County do their roll call.
No, we're not. Go ahead, Bonnie. No.
I just asked her on mute. Can Bonnie hear us?
Yeah, can she hear us? I'm not hearing a roll call.
You may have to speak up, Bonnie.
Speak up, Bonnie. Did you change the audio? When you disconnected?
Here.
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 LaPointe,
Here.
Wheelock, Henschel.
Here. Then now we did the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission.
Thanks, you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Arns,
I'm here.
Commissioner Coco.
Here.
Commissioner DeYoung,
Present.
Commissioner Henschel,
Here.
Commissioner Kern,
Here.
Commissioner Plamondon,
Here.
Commissioner Rushton.
Present.
Thank you. So now I'd just like to make a brief statement in that this is actually a sort of a redo from our March 17th planned meeting, and we're getting together for a discussion of a joint session between Grand Traverse County, Leelanau County, and the Northwest Regional Airport Commission to discuss and have a study concerning the governance of the airport. So I just wanted to welcome all of you, and I'm just happy that we're finally getting to this stage where we can put this together. And I would give it to Mr. Henschel. All right, do you want to say anything, Rob? Can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Uh,
Oh, there you go.
You hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're turning to Leelanau to chair this, I believe. So, go ahead.
All right, thank you. And Mr. DeYoung, did you want to say anything to start out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just again, as you stated, on behalf of the Northwestern Michigan Regional Airport Commission, thank everybody for joining today and really taking a deeper look at a lot of the work that's been done and a lot of the work that still needs to be done. So thank you.
All right, so then that would bring us down to the rules of order. And I just thought I would go through these quickly. If everybody wanted to have any questions about it, we could. The purpose of this study session is, it's as requested by Leelanau and Grand Traverse counties to review the sample of articles of incorporation for potential airport authority to govern the Cherry Capital Airport, or to review the sample and operating agreement for the potential amendment to continue governance as an airport commission. The physical locations of this study is going to be as designated. And then the meeting will also be held remotely with the interest of public safety. So the video technology is going to be utilized, and if you are concerned, and we're going to be live streaming this meeting. It's available on all 3 websites: Grand Traverse Counties, Leelanau Counties, and the Cherry Capital Airport. So, so that you would have to look up that YouTube subscription or number to watch it live. The ability to jointly meet for this purpose is to make it easier to work together effectively to help the commissioners as joint owners of the airport to accomplish this goal. And all members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations, and each chairman will ensure its members will be heard. So Leelanau County, Grand Traverse County, and the Airport Commission will lead the meetings, and during the appropriate time for discussion, each member of this respective commission will notify their chairman if they would like to be heard. So the respective chairman will then call each member of the commission requesting to be heard in alternate fashion in the following order. First Leelanau, then Grand Traverse, then Northwest. So at this time, then, we would have public comment if anyone wanted to
approve the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess we have to have an approval of the agenda first. So if we could just have a motion from someone for approval, Commissioner Ansel.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
So if all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed, do the same sign. So I don't see any opposed, so the motion passes. And so, yes.
I just have one request. If you speak, state your name and who you represent for people watching it. They may not know who everyone is. So if you wish to speak, simply raise your hand. The chairman will recognize you, but also state your name and who you represent. Thank you.
Is that one motion to review it for everyone, or will everyone make one?
I think that's for everyone. Everybody voted that I could see on the thing. I mean, unless Commissioner Henschel, did you want your board to vote separately on this?
On the agenda.
On the approval of the agenda?
Be more formal. Typically, if there's no objection, this is just a study session, but I will give the Grand Traverse Board an opportunity to speak up now if you have a problem with how anything has been presented or being presented. Speak now or hold your.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, got a motion by Jewett.
Support.
Support by Klaus. In a second, Sophia. Roll call vote, please.
Sophia?
Yes.
If that was me, yes.
Jewett?
Yes.
Lapointe?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes, motion carries. Back to you.
Mr. Chairman Henschel, can I just ask that we clarify how members will be able to be called on to speak? I am not able to raise my hand because I'm calling in by phone. So could we just get that housekeeping piece out of the way before we get started.
Okay. Just, I guess you'll just speak up and we'll do our best to recognize you. I can hear you quite well. So just ask for the floor and I will do my best to secure it for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner DeYoung, did you want to do that with the airport as well?
Yes, thank you. Can I get a motion from an airport commission member to support the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Did I get a support?
Yeah, Henschel support it.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Klein.
Barnes,
Yes.
Coco,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Hinchel, Kern,
Yes.
Plamondon,
Yes.
Rushton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we have an agenda. So then that would then bring us to public comment, and it's live streaming this. It's available, and the phone number to call for public comment would be 231-256-8109. That's 231-256-8109. If there's any public comment this time, please call that number and we'll put you on the microphone. Also, while we're waiting for that, I'll talk about, there's some email comments. You can also email comments. Then I guess this was supposed to be prior to the meeting. I don't know that we've received any at all, but they'd be addressed, and those are written out here to Dan Arns at TV Airport, Mike Coco, Doug DeYoung, Rob Henschel, Tom Kern, Steve Plamondon, and Deborah Rushton. So those are all available, and it would be their name at tvcairport.com.
And Mr. Chairman, we have not received any emails.
All right. So I'm not hearing any phone calls at this time. We'll move on then. If someone does call, we'll probably take it at that time if no one objects. So each commission will conduct a public comment. So I would ask if Grand Traverse County at this time would like to call for a public comment.
Read the rules or just ask?
My understanding, Commissioner, is that there are a couple of, looks like one person from the public, maybe two that have dialed into Zoom.
Okay.
So perhaps anybody who's on Zoom, comment, whoever is operating the funds over in Leelanau County would allow them to be unmuted, address you for public comment. Is that, can you unmute those that are in the Commissioner Henschel calls on them?
Who do we have?
No one is muted.
They are able to unmute themselves.
We have no one muted. They may mute themselves, but we do not have anyone muted. So if there's anyone on Zoom, they are welcome to speak.
Masters, do you have a public comment at this time? You have to unmute yourself, I believe, because I don't have it. No comment? And then, who else is a member of the public?
I think that's it.
Is that it?
I
Okay.
think, yeah.
I'll say one more time, anyone looking to make a public comment in the Grand Traverse County meeting, please at this time and speak up. Seeing none, turn it back to Leelanau.
All right. Thank you. Then I would go to the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission and for their public, if they have any public comment. Commissioner DeYoung.
Does anyone have any public comment to the Northwest Michigan Airport Commission at this time?
Mr. DeYoung, if you would remind the commissioners to check their email.
Yes, please check your emails.
All right.
Nothing.
Sounds like we're good.
All right, thank you. So then that would bring us then to the new business, the study session itself, the airport governance options. So at this time, we'd have an overview from Mr. DeYoung, Commissioner DeYoung.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back kind of a little bit where we were and kind of where we are now, just so everybody can get up to speed. So the Airport Governance Advisory Committee was formed by the Northwest Michigan Regional Airport Commission back in March of 2019. The governance review stemmed from the strategic plan process that the airport had, where a governance model was identified. And really what came out of that strategic plan is that we have an outdated basically agreement with both counties on operation of the airport. The agreement either needed to be changed, modified, or looked at as how do we move forward in terms of the governance. The committee was made up of 3 appointees from each commission. So from the Airport Commission, from the Grand Traverse County Board, and the Leelanau County Board as the owners of the airport. The task of the group was to review the current commission model, investigate alternative models, and really look at what is available within the state and within state law. After investigating all possible government structures, it really came down to 2 primary options that were shortlisted. One is a modified commission, and that is to keep the commission in its current model, but modify and accommodate the lengthy and regulated needed governance changes. And we've talked about those over time, some of those that have caused some of the issues where we're at today. The other one was look at a regional airport authority, and that is to transition to an independent regional airport authority specified under state law. After a number of discussions and reviews, they found that there are a number of benefits to go under a regional airport model authority. Promotion of the airport as a regional asset, as a significant economic driver, enhanced protections against financial and operational liabilities for the counties, provide for stronger accountability and transparency to stakeholders, allow for additional community and stronger community input, improved zoning control, which could include a zoning commissioner board, regional board member requirements to reflect the regional impact of the airport, which is criteria and appointment and removal of board members, which currently is not in the agreement, enhanced business focus and efficiencies for airport operations, supporting more nimble business environment, clear and modernization of really the legislation that was put in place that allows for this, and it better conforms with industry standards and best practices how airports are operated. At the end of October 2019, so from March to 2019, we reviewed all of this. At the end of October of 2019, the AGAC submitted its report to the Northwest Michigan Regional Airport Commission, recommending that the model be changed to a regional airport authority structure in accordance with Michigan Airport Authority Act. So from there, the Northwest Michigan Regional Airport Commission voted to accept the report and the recommendation in November of 2019 and basically to transition to the airport authority under the chapter and act that's available through the state. The recommendation and final report was then submitted to both Grand Traverse and Leelanau County for consideration for supporting and approving this transaction and really this transition. And as owners of the airport, it really falls back now on the 2 counties to look at the transition to a new governance model if they so choose. In late 2019 and early 2020, the 2 counties held a combined total of 5 public input sessions on the airport governance model, which represented significant commitment to in public in terms of time, resources, and costs for the purposes of disseminating information practicing good governance, transparency, and soliciting stakeholder input. Due to the COVID impact, which we are all fully aware of, we had a meeting scheduled for March 17th of 2020 to basically have this study session. That was canceled, as we all know. In September of this year, 2020, the AGAC was reconvened to review its prior commitment and determine whether the adjustments and recommendations were necessary, desirable due to the delay of the pandemic, and whether they needed to continue, where we need to move forward. The governance committee unanimously approved moving forward with bringing this back to the study session and bringing it back to the two counties for review and discussion moving forward. And that's really where we are today, is that we are here basically for that rescheduled study session, reconvene, go through the governance model opportunities, go through the platforms, go through the collaborative opportunities that both counties have to continue the strong asset, the economic asset that we have in Cherry Capital Airport moving forward. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Were there any questions this time? Anyone on the phone? Hearing none, I would move on then. There's a request by both Grand Traverse and Leelanau counties to review the sample of articles of incorporation, airport authority, and review of potential amended and restated operating agreements. First up would be Carrie Zeitz from the Airport Commission. You have the floor, Carrie.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bunnick. I'm going to share my screen, which on my screen will be the color-coded articles and amended operating agreement that I believe everyone received in their packet. And when we concluded our discussions pre-COVID in the spring, both county commissions, I think you might have each have said it differently, but essentially both of the county commissions asked to take a look at what the articles of incorporation would look like if we went forward with an authority model in light of the deficiencies that were identified in light of the Regional Airport Authority Act and in light of all of the public input that we received through the 5 public input sessions. And then you also asked to see what the operating agreement would look like, taking into account those considerations as well. So the color-coded document that I believe you have in your packet is intended to provide you with kind of that preview that you've asked. Can everyone see my screen?
Carrie, you're not sharing.
It's sharing is on.
Okay. Can everyone see the?
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay, good. Excellent. So
Yes,
we can see it, but thank you. So let's just, before we begin, we'll go through the key, just to make sure we're all on the same page as to what this document means. The purple is language that would be both in an operating agreement as well as an articles of incorporation for the authority. The teal is language that would just be in articles of incorporation for an authority, and the orange is language that would just be in an amended operating agreement for the Airport Commission. So, and if you guys don't want me to go article by article, let me know, but that's my plan, just so we can all see where the same, or where they're the same and where the differences are. I was planning on going through the articles and the operating agreement, basically article by article. So the first thing that you will notice with respect to either the articles of incorporation or the amended and restated operating agreement, we're proposing to rename the commission or the airport authority from the Northwestern to the northwest. And the reason why we're proposing that is just it's a source of confusion. It's always caused problems, us being Northwestern versus Northwest, and we're just going to fix it. With respect to people refer to it as Northwest, or it accidentally gets typed as Northwest all the time, and so we're just going to fix it to reflect kind of just to correct that issue. So if you look at the recitals, the articles of incorporation are adopted by just the two counties, Leelanau and Grand Traverse. The amended and restated operating agreement for the Northwest Regional Airport Commission would be an agreement between the two counties and the Airport Commission. The two counties and the Airport Commission are currently signatories to the existing operating agreement. So any amendment to that operating agreement would require the consent and approval of the Airport Commission, whereas the Airport Authority articles are adopted solely by the two counties. So we already went through the name. The name would obviously be different. It would be an authority under the Act 95 and a commission under the existing Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code. The next article identifies the incorporating governmental units, the two counties for an authority, and parties to the agreement, the two counties and the Airport Commission for an operating agreement. The purpose, each document would have a purpose paragraph which outlines the purpose of the authority and or the commission. The authority's purposes come from the Authority Act, Act 95, and the commission's purposes come from from Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code, which authorizes the creation of the commission by two or more governmental units. Specific purposes is identified in the potential amended operating agreement. Powers, similarly, these powers, similarly to the purposes, these powers come directly from the two chapters of the Michigan Aeronautics Code, the Authority Chapter and the Commission Chapter, respectively. The items to note here are that with the authority is a separate standalone entity that is a public body corporate with the power to sue or be sued in any court in the state of Michigan. And that's specifically set forth in the Airport Authority Act, that the authority is a separate standalone being. The commission, on the other hand, the thing to note here is that the commission, as authorized by Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code, is is an authorized agent of Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County. The commission is a quasi standalone organization or corporation or entity, I think is probably the best way to say it. But in essence, the commission is only formed as an agent of Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County under Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code, as authorized by the Michigan Aeronautics Code. The term is proposed to be the same, whether it be an authority or commission, and that would be perpetual unless dissolved by a 2/3 vote of the Leelanau and Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners elect, or by law. However, the authority or commission shall not be dissolved if such dissolution would operate as an impairment in any respect of any of its contractual obligations. The thing to note here is currently the term of the commission under the existing operating agreement, which was entered into in 1996, I want to say. I don't have it. Oh, no, I have it right here. 1999, sorry. The term of the commission is currently 50 years. So that is a bit of a difference for term purposes. This does fix one of the issues that was identified in the study of the commission form of governance, and that is that, if a commission is limited to a 50-year term of governance and then there has to be a renewal, it does, as we get closer to that end of that term, it does impair the ability for the commission to enter into long-term leases most significantly. Dissolution is proposed to be the same under either forms. This dissolution paragraph is very similar to the existing dissolution paragraph in the existing operating agreement. But basically it says that upon dissolution, the airport property and the debts, liabilities, and obligations of the authority and/or commission shall be transferred to another form of governance than lawfully allowed by statute to operate the airport under such terms and conditions as the parties may agree. If no agreement can be reached within 6 months, there's a dispute resolution paragraph requiring that the two counties designate a board of 3 members each to determine what to do with the airport and what form of governance to transfer it to. And if the parties can't agree, then whatever that committee decides is what will happen, unless either county files an action with the 13th Circuit Court seeking a declaration that the plan for disposition is invalid or otherwise not permitted. This also, and you'll see further on in the agreement as well, we also have another dispute resolution provision, but this also kind of fixes that. One of the issues that was identified as a problem with the current form of governance is there really wasn't a dispute resolution paragraph in the existing operating agreement. So this codifies that for this issue, and then further on you'll see there's a dispute resolution paragraph for other issues. Expansion of commission. So this would only apply to the commission form of government because an expansion is not contemplated under the Authority Act, because you're not expanding the authority, you're creating the authority, and you're establishing the board and from where the board comes from. In creating the authority, you don't add other governmental units under the Authority Act to participate in the creation of the authority. But in the expansion, under Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code, you can expand the commission, and you can add additional political subdivisions to participate in the commission form of government. And this paragraph comes pretty much verbatim from the existing operating agreement. The governing board, so this is going to look different for an authority than it is going to be for a commission. The proposal for the governing board is that the authority shall be directed and governed by a board consisting of 9 members. 3 of the members will be appointed by Leelanau County Board of Commissioners, thus giving Leelanau County 1 more appointment, and 6 appointed by the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners, also giving Grand Traverse County 1 more appointment. That 1 more appointment for Grand Traverse County, though, would be a member from who shall be a resident outside of both Grand Traverse and Leelanau counties. You probably all recall that the Authority Act does require that 1 board member not be from the jurisdiction of the creating entities. And so the Grand Traverse County would get that appointment, and Leelanau County would get the additional appointment from 2 to 3. Because currently Leelanau County has 2, and Grand Traverse County has 5 appointments. So the articles, or the new articles, would also contain the qualifications for the board members. These come directly out of the the Regional Airport Authority Act, Act 95. The terms of the office shall be 3 years. That's no change from now. It's currently 3 years, if I recall correctly. And in the event a member's appointing body does not appoint a successor, the member shall continue in office beyond the ending dates of the term they were appointed for and until such time as may be required for the member's appointing body to renew the term or select a different member. That's how it works currently. There is a provision for the removal of a board member that has been appointed to the authority board. That's, I think, also one of the defects or one of the issues or collective wants that was identified through the course of this discussion is that there should be some mechanism for removal. The Act 95, Airport Authority Act, does allow there to be a member or a method of removal for a board member of an authority, and that's codified or set forth here in the proposed articles. So it's a removal for cause, and cause is described as either ceasing to meet qualifications for appointment, failure to attend at least 70% of the meetings of the board each fiscal year, conviction of a felony or crime involving moral turpitude, breach of fiduciary duty to the authority, having a conflict of interest, being in default to the county, and other conduct as specified in the bylaws of the authority for which the board may recommend removal by the counties. So the governing board for the commission in orange, it's a little different. It's as is, which is a 7-member board with 2 members appointed by the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners and 5 appointed by the Grand Traverse Board of Commissioners. No qualifications contained in the operating agreement. Of course, that each county is free to adopt its own qualifications and criteria and manner in which they select members of the airport commission, but there's nothing here in the operating agreement that would restrict or guide that. Each member would be appointed for 3-year terms. The successor, if there's not a successor appointed, that issue is handled the same way in the amended operating agreement as under the articles, but there is no provision for removal. The removal would default to a county's ability to remove one of its appointed member or one of its appointed board members as set forth in the County Act, which is a process and requires requires a hearing and but there is a process under the County Act, which I just don't have in front of me. But if we have a question about that, I can look that up while we're talking. Vacancy, same for both commission and authority. If a board or commission member is removed or is unable to complete the term, then the appointment would be filled in the same manner as it was filled to begin with. And then if there was a temporary absence or disability of the chair or the vice chair of the authority or the commission, then the chief executive officer in the case of an authority or the chair in the case of a commission may appoint another to act in the treasurer's stead. Meetings are contemplated to be handled the same way, either under a commission or an authority, which is essentially that the authority or the commission shall adopt its own regular schedule of meetings and handle it per their bylaws that they'll be adopting following the creation of an authority board, or the commission already does, in fact, have bylaws that deals with meetings and how meetings are conducted, the rules relating to public comment, etc., and how a regular meeting and a scheduled meeting is going to, a special meeting will be called. Board and officer duties. This is slightly different this is different this would only be applicable to the authority because the airport commission already has bylaws that speak to board and officer duties, and the Airport Authority Act, basically the way that the board and officer duties is prescribed in the proposed articles is consistent with and dictated by the Airport Authority Act, including the appointment of the chief executive officer, which basically is which is the airport manager, airport director, which we have under the commission form, but under the authority form, the airport director will be the chief executive officer. And then we'll also have appointed under an authority, if that's the direction we're going in, a chief financial officer who shall be treasurer of the authority. Employment of personnel only applies to the airport commission model, and that's basically the authorization to employ an airport director and create such other positions as may from time to time be recommended by the airport director, and that comes out of the existing operating agreement. The audit committee. So the Act 95, the Airport Authority Act, basically sets forth the requirement that there be an audit committee, and that's codified in this article. The proposal is to have an audit committee either under a commission form of government or authority form of government, because it's a good idea either way to have an audit committee to prepare an annual report related to the financial condition, operations, performance, and in management of the airport, and present it to the two counties for their information and review. The fiscal year would be the same as what we currently operate under, which is January 1st through December 31st of each year. That would be the same under a commission or an authority form of government. Indebtedness of the authority. So this, the proposal is to basically require the authorization and permission of the two counties before we incur indebtedness, the airport authority or the commission, that pledges the full faith and credit of either of the two counties, either under an authority model or a commission model, and that's, I think, consistent with the collective desire of the public and the commissions in discussing this particular issue. Under the commission form of government, we would also add a provision allowing the airport commission to enter into an installment purchase agreement that don't exceed 15 years. And this is a one of the defects that was identified in the original operating agreement and under the current form of commission governance. So typically when a municipality, a unit of government, incurs indebtedness, they have to incur indebtedness only pursuant to the Revenue Bond Act, or the Michigan Revenue Bond Act, which is a long process, and there are a lot of requirements and a lot of boxes to check. However, most units of government have the ability to enter into installment purchase agreements for the purchase of equipment, for example, that do not exceed a certain period of time and don't exceed the useful life of the property. It just makes, when you need to get a piece of equipment quickly, a lot easier because you don't have to go through under all of the bond statutes and the bond laws. And an authority specifically and expressly does have that ability under the Regional Airport Authority Act, but a commission, there's nothing in the current operating agreement or in the Chapter 7 of the Aeronautics Code permitting that. So we're going to put that right into the proposed operating agreement if we amend the operating agreement. Grants and aid. So these are the grants that we get from the FAA primarily. It's under either the authority or the commission model. It would be the same. Basically, either the authority or the commission would have the ability and power to apply for and accept all grants from the United States of America or the state of Michigan for the purpose of operating, for airport purposes and for the purposes of operating the airport. The budget proposal is different or is the same under the authority model or the commission model up until which is basically we'll prepare a budget. It'll comply with the Uniform Budget and Accounting Act for every year, and it's the same up until we get to the agreement to share in any costs for operating, maintaining, improving the airport that are not covered by airport expenses and or revenues. And this comes directly out of the current operating agreement, and those costs would be shared as they are in the current operating agreement, 85% Grand Traverse County and 15% Leelanau County. Conveyance of airport property, under the authority model, the airport property would be conveyed by quitclaim deed for the sum of $1 to the airport authority. And the conveyance would be as is, whereas. So the title, the authority will accept title to the airport as is and shall assume responsibility for the corrections of any defects in title. And this we've talked about before, that there are several defects in title that have been identified. There have been several defects in title that have been identified through this process, and I think one of the items that was included in your packet was an estimate of the cost of correcting the title defects under an authority model versus an airport commission model. And basically, that it should be noted that those costs are estimates and estimates only. And they're basically the, sorry, I just really need to click. They're basically the airport's engineers, the airport's attorneys, airport's administrations, and consultants' best guess of the max cost of correcting each of the title defects that have been identified through the Exhibit A process. And really the takeaway from that chart, which I believe you have, is that it's estimated that the cost to fix the title defects under an authority model versus a commission model is about 48% less. 48% less if there has to be litigation to deal with some of the title issues that have been identified.
Could you explain why, or is that for a later in the
Why is it 40%?
presentation?
Well, it's 48% less because when we convert to an authority, if we converted to an authority model, the process that we need to go through with the FAA for getting approval, etc., getting approval of the conversion, getting to a different sponsor, getting approval of the conversion from the FAA will in some of the title defects cases basically create a clean slate, and some of the issues will not have to be handled in all the issues will ultimately have to be handled one way or the other, but some of the issues will not have to be handled in as formal of a way as if we remained a commission. So, for example, some easements we might just be able to deal with by formalizing the easement instead of having to get an appraisal for the cost of the easement and then going to the person or the entity that holds the easement and asking them to pay fair market value and negotiate with them about that issue. We might be able to just formalize the easement, instead of requiring fair market value. So that's why. Does that answer that question, Mr. Hunley?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And as I indicated, under the authority model, the airport, it would be the airport's responsibility to clear those title defects. Under the commission model, the conveyance of airport property would be through a lease, just like it is now. And that's partly driven by, when I began this conversation, I indicated that the commission is an entity, but it's kind of a quasi entity, and it really acts as the agent of the two counties. And as the agent of the two counties, it doesn't really have the ability to hold title. And under the Chapter 7, it contemplates that the title to the airport, the ownership of the airport, will remain in the name of the two entities that have created the commission for the purpose of operating the airport. So it would be a lease, and it would not be a conveyance. And the proposal in that situation would be that the lease would be provided to the airport we'd be provided quiet title, meaning the defects would be the defects to the title would be fixed, and the airport's position is that they would like to see the two counties correct at least the defects that were created prior to the original conveyance, or no, the defects that were created and in existence at the time that the airport property was conveyed from the city to the counties back in 1992, I believe. And the lease would be for the purpose of allowing the airport to operate the airport for airport purposes. And there's a definition contained in the articles defining airport purposes as aeronautical and non-aeronautical uses of the airport or activities of the commission that are determined by the commission to be necessary or desirable for benefit or contribute to the establishment, construction, enlargement, improvement, maintenance, equipment, operation, and regulation of the airport and the airport facility. So zoning, this also provision would have The differs under the authority and the commission model. The zoning as proposed for the authority would be the authority would establish a zoning board with jurisdiction over zoning of the airport property. That board will consist of 7 members. 4 members would be selected by the authority, 1 member to be selected by East Bay Township, 1 member to be selected by Garfield Township, and 1 member to be selected by the city of Traverse City. And then the authority would adopt an ordinance regulating the use and development of property that is part of the airport. And this provision addresses the, the collective desire for more representation with respect to, in particular, I think that what was heard is the more representation with respect to the land use decisions of the airport, and this zoning board would provide that more representation. Currently, there is no representation specifically with respect to zoning and land use decisions of the airport from East Bay and Garfield, which are 2 of our neighbors. The city obviously does currently have representation with respect to our land use decisions because they regulate our land use decisions, but neither Garfield nor East Bay currently have a voice, and this would give them that voice, and that's something I think that we heard through the process, that there should be a broader representation on those issues.
Ms. Ice,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Cuffia. Can you just clarify current zoning authority lies, over airport functions and activities lies with is it the city itself? Can you just, because you explained how it would be under an authority, but I just want there to be more clarity on the current. And there was, I think I remember there was some question over how much authority the city had in certain cases with zoning. So can you delineate what the current status is with zoning for the airport?
Yes, certainly. So currently, and we propose to specifically set that forth in an amended operating agreement, because that would basically, if we did an amended operating agreement, the status quo with zoning would remain unchanged. Under the Airport Authority Act, the Airport Authority gets zoning jurisdiction over everything on the airport. Under the current stated law, as set forth in the proposed amended operating agreement, the city has zoning jurisdiction for non-aeronautical uses at the airport. Pursuant to the Michigan Aeronautics Code and Capital Regional Airport Authority versus Charter Township of DeWitt, the commission shall have exclusive zoning jurisdiction for aeronautical uses and activities necessary for aeronautical uses at the airport. So that's the current state of the zoning issue for the airport. Is the city has zoning jurisdiction for non-aeronautical uses, and but the city does not have jurisdiction over aeronautical uses at the airport. Does that answer the question, Ms. Sophia?
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. The next article is eminent domain. This is a bit of a colorful article, but basically we're proposing eminent domain the same under either the authority or the commission model. Under the Regional Airport Authority Act, the authority could have exclusive eminent domain jurisdiction, but based on the comments and the collective wants that we heard on these issues through the process, the public input process and our previous meetings, the eminent domain jurisdiction would have to go through the counties under either the commission or the airport authority. So if the airport authority wanted to exercise eminent domain, they would have to get the concurrence of both Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County. That's already required under the Chapter 7 of the Michigan Aeronautics Code. And then, of course, if it's a commission, any condemnation proceedings shall be instituted in the names of the two counties, and the property acquired shall be held by the political subdivisions as tenants in common. And that's what happens now. So anytime the airport acquires property, whether by condemnation or otherwise, it's always held in the names of the two counties for the purpose of operating the airport. So that's no different. So basically it would be the same either under the authority or the commission for the exercise of eminent domain. Voting requirements. So what does it take for a motion to pass at an airport authority or airport commission? Generally speaking, a majority of the board. And then, but specifically, the following actions would require a 2/3 vote of either the board or the commission. And that would be acceptance or conveyance of the operational jurisdiction of another airport, commitment of revenues of the authority or commission for the payment of indebtedness. So any sort of bonding or borrowing would have to have at least 2/3 of the airport authority board or commission to incur indebtedness, adoption of ordinances, and removal of the chief executive officer and or the airport director. Dispute resolution, as I indicated a while ago now, I apologize. This is one of the issues that was identified as a defect in the previous agreement. It didn't really have a dispute resolution provision. So it's proposed that either under either the authority or the commission model, that if there is a dispute between the two counties with respect to a request by the commission or the authority that is required to be approved by the counties shall meet jointly with the commission within 30 days, along with a mediator to resolve the dispute. And in the event that a dispute regarding the exercise of eminent domain is not resolved, an action shall be filed in the 13th Circuit Court seeking a declaration by the court of whether the proposed acquisition is necessary to accomplish a public purpose. Effective date, this would only apply to the authority because the commission is obviously inexistent. The authority shall become effective upon the filing of certified copies of the articles with the Secretary of State. That comes right out of the act. Adoption and amendments. The articles are to be adopted by a majority of the two counties, the majority of the commissioners of the two counties. And then the operating agreement would also need to be adopted by a majority of the parties, and in that case, the two counties would be parties as well as the airport commission. I missed that distinction in that article. I apologize. Publication and filing, that would only apply to the articles of incorporation. It's required under the act that you publish them pursuant to the act. And then entire agreement, it would only apply in the commission. Basically what this says is that this amended operating agreement supersedes and replaces the old operating agreements. So that is a walk through the articles in the operating agreement as I intended to or tried to express is that these articles / amended operating agreement were drafted with the eye to considering the defects that had been previously identified in the previous agreement, as well as addressing the concerns and the issues and the wants that were raised by the public and the two commissions throughout this process.
Carrie, we have a question.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes, on page 4, under the governing board, I see that it is split up with 3 members from Leelanau County and 6 members appointed, 3 members appointed by Leelanau, 6 appointed by Grand Traverse. That seems pretty lopsided with a 15%, 85% ownership or liability. If the board had been 1.5 appointed by Leelanau County and 8.5 by Grand Traverse. So I just think it should be no more than 2 members, and actually the more reasonable would be 1 member appointed by Leelanau, 8 members appointed by others. So it's just my comment.
Yes, I just to remind the commissioner that if we are if the airport became an authority, then there would no longer be that dichotomy of 85% responsibility / liability of the Grand Traverse County and 15% liability / responsibility of Leelanau County, because the authority would be a separate standalone board and a standalone entity where basically the authority would be responsible entirely for the shortfalls and the liability of operating the airport. So that 15% distinction goes away under the authority model.
But in those instances where the airport authority would come to us to ask for both of the boards full faith and credit on debt issuance, so we're backstopping it. How would that function? Are we joint and several, or like what does that look like?
When you're going to the full faith and credit of the counties for bonds.
Yeah.
Full faith and credit of the county that's pledging the full faith and credit would, yes, be the backstop for that indebtedness, yes. And that how that liability gets handled and whose full faith and credit goes on the line, would be determined at the time indebtedness is incurred. And then once the indebtedness is incurred and the full faith is pledged, then the bond rules kick in, and the rule is that if the authority fails to pay its bonds, then the full faith and credit of whoever pledged their full faith and credit is on the line.
Question for Commissioner LaPointe.
No, just a comment on that. I believe an authority can bond on their own. Is that correct?
Yes, they can. They do not have to go to the county for the full faith and credit.
Bond on their own, so neither has a liability or potential liability, or they could go to Leelanau and they could bond, or they could go to Grand Traverse County. So I don't think there's an issue. I think any board at that time would have to decide if they want to bond for the airport or say to the authority, bond on your own, and the county should be out of it.
Carrie, can you take the articles off so that we can see who's talking? And
oh yeah, of course. Sorry. Let me find the right icon. Oh, here we go. Stop share. Okay, there you go. Is that okay? Yep, you're welcome.
So, other questions then? Commissioner Lautner.
Yes, Commissioner Lautner, Leelanau County. On this, the whole document that you just went over, I just personally found it very hard to follow, and I kept having to go back to the first page for the key to see, okay, the teal ink, what was that one again? I don't know why exactly it was done this way, and then in the final pages, all of the yellow highlighting, I didn't catch why you said there was so much yellow highlighting. Is that a idea or, I just don't understand that. So I guess I'd have to reread this document, but I'd like to see it, 3 separate documents written, like one as a commission and authority, one as an authority, and one as a commission. And I think that would be, I think we could get a much better understanding of this whole document.
Yes, I would be happy to provide that.
Any other? Commissioner Rettenbach.
Okay, I have 2 more questions, which is good.
Yeah, I also had a question about the governing board. If Leelanau County is allowed 3 members, or we can appoint 3 members, so 2 can be elected officials, and then we have to go outside the county to get another person? Is that correct?
No, not for Leelanau County. It would be Grand Traverse County's additional member would be the one that would be outside of Grand Traverse County.
Okay, so ours would it would be okay to have them all from Leelanau County.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
As proposed. I mean, obviously, this is a proposal for the board.
Right.
You know, it's you guys, the 2 counties, can hash that out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Long.
Yeah, thank you. So then I have 2 more questions, so I guess go back to the beginning. Back on page 3, you were talking of the article and term, and you were talking something about, I couldn't catch if you were saying 15 or 50 years, and what was that about?
Yes, the current operating agreement has the airport commission's term at 50, so 50 years. And the proposal is either under the authority or the commission model for it to be a perpetual term.
And I think this may have been on page 4 when you're talking about the article under the governance board, the authority shall, so this would be for an authority. And it might have been what Carolyn Rettenbach was speaking about. It says no more than 2 members shall be, that are appointed, may be elected officials. So elected officials in what capacity? So they appoint a commissioner and a township trustee, then the other one must not be another, the road, can't be somebody sitting on the road commission. Is it all levels of elected? Is that the intent?
No, that is not the intent. The intent, comes from the airport, or it comes from Act 95, and Act 95 restricts the ability of an appointing board to put on more than 2 of its elected members. So it would just be, and I'm just going to confirm that, but that's my understanding. It would be just the elected members that sit on each of the county boards. Not a township board member, a village, or.
And then towards the end of the next paragraph down, when you speak about removing, it says the board may recommend approval by the county. So this board wishes to remove a member, and they have to go to which county? Do you ask them for permission? You make a recommendation to the counties plural, or who?
Oh, it would just be the appointing board that would have the authority to remove their appointee, not each of the counties.
The board itself would remove its own members?
Either county may remove a member appointed by them for cause. So it would be,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So but the recommendation is made by the airport authority board?
No, the airport authority board could recommend, but the counties could act, unilaterally as well for one of the reasons.
Ourselves removal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You through with them, or?
Oh, would these be voluntary positions? They serve voluntarily? And either of these, or as an authority, would they serve voluntarily, and a commission be compensation, commission and authority?
Oh, yeah, no compensation is proposed for either method.
Would that be something that would be amendable in the document by the authority once it was in place, or I guess the adoption and amendments sentence that you have, article in there, that says shall be adopted and may be amended by an affirmative vote of the majority of the Leelanau County Board of Commissioners and the Grand Traverse Board of Commissioners. Just making sure. I'm sorry?
You should identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Commissioner Hundley from Grand Traverse. Sorry, thank you. You made some comment at the end of when you were describing that article, and just making sure I understood how that, how the articles, the incorporating document, how it could be amended going forward, what that process is.
Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Am I on mute? Yes. The incorporating a document itself would only be amended if it's an authority. The incorporating document itself could only be amended by the two counties. If it's a commission, because remember the commission would be a signatory to the agreement or a party to the agreement, then it needs all three to agree to amend it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so in this case, basically you would have each board would vote, and then each board would, so 4 members from the Grand Traverse Board and whatever the majority of the Leelanau Board would have to both agree.
To amend the articles, that's correct. Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay.
Commissioner Solislow.
Yes, could we, Carrie, return to the indebtedness article and the budget? And if I'm reading this correctly, under the indebtedness, to enter into a bond, the authority would have to get approval from the two counties. That was question number 1, the way it's written. I wasn't sure. And number 2 is, let's assume, picking up the example someone else tossed out, that the authority can bond on their own. If they default, who's on the hook? Just the authority, or are the counties?
Well, if it's just the authority that's bonding, then it would just be the authority that would be on the hook.
Okay. Yeah. And in terms of approving whether or not, is approval required for the authority to go out for a bond on their own?
Not as proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A hand by Commissioner Hundley.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I guess I have 2 other questions. The kind of skill sets enumerated where under the board, the governing board, and they will have to have these experience in aviation, business, and so forth. Is that limited by the Regional Authority Act, or like it could be these things, but if the boards wanted to include additional whatever things that we thought was relevant, I mean, is that possible, or is that the limit?
I think that it would be possible to include other things. Those are the limits. I mean, those are the absolute requirements as set forth in the Regional Airport Authority Act. So, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't develop others.
And then I guess my only other question was back some time ago when you came to our board, and I imagine you did to Leelanau as well. We got maps that kind of showed the circles around the cones, expanding cones of restrictions on building heights, essentially, that emanate away from the runways. And I still have that. And I guess one question on reading that, because it helps me understand how the community is impacted by the airport, which is great to have so nearby. But like, anyway, it says the established airport elevation is 624 feet. And this first like large cone that basically envelops the entire city of Traverse City says 774. So I just wanted to make sure that I was reading that as long as the airport was where it is, I think that means that no building could be more than 150 feet in Traverse City, regardless of what Traverse City wanted to zone for. I just wanted to see if I'm reading that correctly.
Well, without looking at the map, I mean, that's how you calculate, right? You take the ground elevation of the airport and then you subtract that from the max height typically, but without looking at the map, I can't confirm that. I'll let Kevin speak to that.
Thanks, Carrie. You're interpreting correct, Commissioner Huntley.
Okay, thanks.
Ansorgi.
Yes, this is Tony Ansorgi, District 1, Leelanau County. Under the dissolution article, it's only anticipating that the airport will be transferred to another entity as an airport. But as Kevin can tell you, airports do close. What would happen in the event of the assets of the airport if it actually ceases to be an airport? It doesn't talk about that. We need to have that in there as far as dissolution and where, how's the money split up? Airports do close. Kevin can tell you all about that. What do you do? So that needs to be ironed out. And under the current agreement, I think it's a 50-50 split. Is that correct, Karen? Carrie, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Under the current agreement, the proceeds, I believe that's, I don't have, no, I do have it. It says, the profits of the airport would be $85.15. It's $85.15. The profits are $85.15. It's the same percentage as the liability. That's what it is currently.
Yeah, I know the liabilities are 85-15, but I thought the dissolution was something different. But we can iron that out. We don't need to, but it does need to be spelled out what happens if the airport actually closes and not transferred to another airport agency. Under the article for indebtedness, you got it set up so that the airport can go out and do borrowing on its own authority. We don't have to set it up that way. Under authority, the authority can be set up that they can't borrow money at all unless they come to the county and ask for that. So as far as I know, we've not had that discussion. You wrote it up as if the airport could go out and borrow money on its own authority, but we don't have to set it up that way. Is that a correct statement?
That's the proposal. Yep, that is a correct statement. It's the proposal that it would be the full faith and credit that would require the approval of the counties, not if the airport went out on its own. That's correct. And you could set it up differently. Yep, you could set it up.
We can set it up any way we want, and that's the discussion we want to have, is whether we want to have the airport authority to have the ability to go out and borrow money. Under the zoning, you talk about East Bay and Garfield townships But there are other townships, if you look at the maps that we were talking about, that have airport overlays where they aren't allowed to build things of a certain height. And we're not looking to get their input in any kind of zoning board in the future. We're just out there saying, hey, you just can't do this. Is there, why, you only pick the ones that were closest just because they have the most impact and you're just ignoring the other townships?
Well, I think the reason why the three neighboring jurisdictions were picked is because they're the ones that directly neighbor the airport, and the zoning board only governs land use decisions on the airport. Land use decisions related to the airport, all off the airport and other jurisdictions, that's governed by their zoning enabling or their zoning ordinance and the Michigan Airport Zoning Act, which does require that zoning jurisdictions that are impacted and within a radius of an airport follow the Michigan Department of Transportation AARO's airport AAP. So that's the airport approved plan, I think. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's the Michigan. So zoning decisions off the airport are governed by the Michigan the Airport Zoning Act.
I understand that. I'm just saying you're only taking input from those people that are closest, even though other townships are impacted by zoning limitations for the airport. So I'm just making the observation. Maybe that's all we want to do, and that's fine, but other townships are impacted by having restrictions as far as zoning, mainly height, in other locations.
I can address that maybe, Carrie. There'd be 7 members of that zoning board, 4 which would be of the airport authority, and then the 3 others are the surrounding townships. So their opportunity to ensure others are represented would come from the authority board as they're approved from the 2 counties.
Chairman Henschel.
Good. Commissioner LaPointe, I have a couple of questions or clarification.
Commissioner Henschel had his hand up first, and I'll call him.
I'm recognizing Commissioner LaPointe. He had a question.
Okay. Okay, on the zoning, did I understand Carrie to say correct that the zoning only applies to the airport property itself?
Correct. The airport zoning under the authority and the zoning ordinance that the airport authority would adopt and that would be administered by our zoning board, yes, just the airport itself.
Only the airport property, not anything beyond that. So that's the rationale, I think, of why it's the people immediately adjacent to the airport. The other thing of clarification was a question brought up if the airport is sold or whatever, and distribution of the quote unquote profits. I thought when we first talked about this in the current commission articles or whatever, it does talk about a profit and profit distribution. But I thought that the consultant said that that would be illegal, that you in fact distribute any profits from an airport, whether they sell a piece of property on the airport or if they defunct, profits cannot, they would go back to the government, the federal government or the FAA, whoever, as opposed to either county. So can you give some clarification on that? Because I thought we really discussed that point. We're told that, because there was some discussion, thinking we could perhaps wring some profit out of the airport or have them do some things on non-airport property, but that would be considered illegal. Can you comment on that?
Yes, while the airport is operating, you cannot share the profits of the airport with any other jurisdiction. It all has to go back into the operation of the airport. If you take any money that's derived from the airport, aeronautical uses, non-aeronautical uses, and you divert it, that would be considered revenue diversion, and that's not allowed under the FAA regulations and federal statutes. If the airport completely stopped operating as an airport, which, I mean, I'm not saying it's entirely impossible, because it is possible. Nothing's impossible. There would have to be a lot of issues with respect to how many grants that we've received from the federal government over the many years of operation, and we'd probably have to pay those grants back, and then the property itself would follow the existing chain of title. And there are at least, so when the airport was conveyed from the city, there's a reverter clause. The city has a reverter clause, and when the city acquired the airport, or the bulk of the airport, back in 1938 from the state of Michigan has a reverter clause, and it would revert back to the state of Michigan if it wasn't operated as an airport. So there would have to be, so I don't want to say that it would be totally impossible if the airport shut down, that there wouldn't be like some money left over, but it would be extraordinary if there was, and it would probably have to depend on the FAA, not wanting to get paid back the millions upon millions of dollars that given to the airport to operate the airport for the past since the 40s.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wessel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for the overview. And clearly, the way it's written, there's some benefits efficiency-wise and liability-wise. I'm still struggling with appointed board versus elected boards, and my bias is that elected boards are more representative and easier for residents and citizens to have input. Are there options to the governing board section that could make a little bit more accountability for the appointed and the governing board to be more responsive to community? Just a question. I don't know if you have an answer, or if Kevin has an answer, or maybe you can tell me I'm wrong.
Kevin, do you want to address that?
I can attempt to, and then Carrie, if you want to step in. Both boards would be appointed in the same fashion, whether it's a commission or an authority. So, so when you look at whether it's elected or appointed, the commission is currently appointed today with one elected official, and that similar process, whether it's an authority or commission, would take place. So it would literally rely on the process that each county would take to select its members. Carrie, I don't know if you can add to that.
Yeah, and I think that with the authority, because it's permissible under the Authority Act to put in provisions with respect to removal for cause and the ability for the counties to remove for cause, that is why we would put that in there, for that exact reason, to make them, the board members that are appointed, the authority board members, more accountable to their elected appointing boards. And so those elected appointing boards would have more of an opportunity to remove if necessary. And that was our attempt to address that issue, Commissioner Wessel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sure, Hensel.
I was just going to propose we take a 5 or 10 minute recess. We've been at this for 95 minutes.
All right, let's do that. Take 5 minutes so everyone can go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, whatever they need. Try to be back here by 22, please. 20 minutes to 4.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it was. I'd like to begin again if we can. Call this back to order. Were there any more questions for Carrie at this time?
I do. Commissioner Kafia?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I have 3 questions. One has to do with the discussion that one of the other commissioners brought up about accountability. I'm curious whether I'm thinking of the Leelanau Road Commission, for example, which unlike our road commission is actually directly popularly elected. Ours is appointed by our County Board of Commissioners, but I wanted to get clarity on whether there are examples or whether it's legally possible for the Airport Authority Board to be directly elected by the public. That's my first question, if someone could speak to that. And then I have 2 others.
Commissioner Kofia, I was just looking at that when we were offline, and my read of the act is no, they cannot be directly elected. But that is my read on that question, and I can follow up to make sure that's the case, but I don't believe so.
Yeah. Please do. So that leads me right to my second question. In the statements by the consultants, as well as the package of information with the PowerPoint you all sent, there was the statement that moving to an authority made it more, accountable to the public, the voters, the taxpayers who own the property, and more transparent. And I just wanted to, could you or Kevin speak to exactly how the specific ways that is actually more accountable and transparent than it currently is if you move to an authority?
Well, I think the paragraph with respect to, or the provision with respect to the ability to remove for cause and the description of the removing for cause, plus the addition of the airport zoning board that, throughout the process, I think we heard concerns from the public and commissioners with respect to transparency and accountability, mostly directed toward the land use decisions of the airport, and that that zoning board, adds that layer of accountability and transparency. I think that'd be my answer, Commissioner Kofia.
Okay, and that perfectly dovetails with my last 2 questions, which are both about zoning and specifically about eminent domain. So with zoning, the move to an authority, would that allow the airport to designate property for example, commercial development that you currently cannot?
We would have to go through the process with the FAA to have the property declared able to be utilized for non-aeronautical uses. And right now, we only have the 60 acres or the 60 acres, the Costco parcel, that are currently designated by the FAA as available for non-aeronautical uses, I believe. Any other property that is currently not designated for non-aeronautical uses would have to go through the FAA process.
And is that different than currently? If you move to an authority, does that free the airport up to go through the FAA process more seamlessly and with fewer other sort of hurdles to jump through than they currently have?
Not to my knowledge. Kevin?
That's correct, Carrie. It'd be the same process, whatever governance form we would be.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last question, thank you, is about eminent domain. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. That did come through pretty loudly in the public hearings, and I know I and some other commissioners was concerned about the eminent domain process. Am I understanding correctly that the amended proposal to move to an authority would actually keep eminent domain decision-making to the 2 county boards, and that we would have to vote in favor both county boards in order for eminent domain to be applied? Is that right?
That is correct. That is the proposal. Yes, that's correct. And I just want to add that when you do go through the non-aeronautical process with the FAA, it is a public process. They do a public notice, and so it is a very public process.
But not a vote by the public, even if the public came and gave feedback. Like our road commission has public hearings, but the voters don't ultimately get to decide. It's up to these appointed board members. So it's like
Ultimately
that, yeah.
up to the FAA. It's ultimately up to the FAA. So
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Those were my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, Commissioner Ansorgi has a question.
Tony Ansorgi, Leelanau County District 1. Under the conveyance of airport property, under the commission option, you specifically said that it's set up so that the counties would have to provide free and clear title to all the property. And yet under the authority, they're going to take the property as is. That's just an option. You put that in there. We don't have to, if we want to stay with a commission, they can just take the property as it is today, because that's the way it is under the commission today. Why would you do that, other than to make it look like it's more expensive to stay as a commission than to move to an authority? That's the only reason I can see that that's in there, is to make this lopsided. There's no reason it has to be delivered free and clear, because it's not free and clear today. It's as is today under the commission. So why did you do that?
Well,
Ms. Seitz, would you like me to address that?
Yeah,
I'll start by addressing it, and then you can follow up maybe with that. The airport is going through what's called an Exhibit A process that started in 2016. That was the catalyst to start with, then look at the strategic and business plan of the airport, which then led to the governance. One of the reasons that we have to go through that is to update our airport layout plan, and that is required for us to do as we attempt to go into any master planning process, which we expect to come up in the next 2 years. When we do that, the FAA requires us to reconcile all property. And right now, the FAA has identified these deficiencies, which are in your chart. So they need to be corrected and have been pointed out by the FAA to be corrected as a deficiency of title. So that's one of the reasons why it gave us options on looking at using our governance model to leverage the best way to resolve these properties issues. Carrie, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, and as you said, Commissioner Ansorgi, I think that's the commissioner that was speaking. Commissioner Ansorgi, it is the proposal, and can we negotiate a different proposal? Of course we can. But I would point out that currently the current situation is that at the time that the lease was issued in 1999-ish, I'll say, that the lease does provide that the property is given to the airport, that we have quiet enjoyment of that airport and of the property, and that we can use it for our intended purposes. And some of the issues that have been identified in that table did arise prior to that lease being given to the airport with an assurance of basically, I don't want to say that it might be too strong to say an assurance of clean title, but certainly an assurance of quiet enjoyment. And I think, and that's the source, and that's the airport's, that's the source of the airport's proposal, is that in 1990-ish, 99-ish, the airport was told that we would have quiet enjoyment of this property, and now we found that there were title issues that were in existence at that time. And so that's the source of the proposal. Can it be negotiated? Of course it can.
And that's my point, is either you're going to resolve these title issues irregardless of which governance structure you pick. And to say, okay, we're not going to take it into a commission until the counties resolve this, that's just a one-sided argument there, as far as I can see.
That would be the airport's argument, yes. And I understand totally that the counties might have a different viewpoint on that, 100%. Yep.
Commissioner
And you are right, we will have to resolve them either way. We have to resolve these issues regardless of the format that of the governance permit.
Commissioner Hanson.
Recognize Commissioner LaPointe.
Commissioner LaPointe, I'll just make a few comments. I was on the Interact committee that's looked at this for like over a year now. Sat in all the meetings, and to be honest with you, I was very skeptical. I think I made some comments to that regard of why we should go to an authority or why we should change. But in listening to in going through it and asking a lot of questions, which I'm prone to do, I changed my mind probably midway through the discussion and thought for numerous reasons that going to an authority was a better option. Clearly, when you look at the airport as a regional asset versus a city asset or a county asset, an authority more in my mind represents that. Another key thing is there was no potential for profit to the county in having ownership, retaining any degree of ownership. There's only potential liability. So that was another reason of why get rid of that potential liability. The other one was the zoning, which we discussed to a large degree. The proposal that's been put forward addresses that. And I'm talking primarily zoning for non-aeronautical purposes on the airport property. Right now that falls under the jurisdiction of Traverse City, who is one party that's adjacent to that property, but it doesn't give any input to Garfield or East Bay, which probably has more residents adjacent to that property than Traverse City itself does. So I thought that was a plus in going to an authority which would allow us to clean up the issue of zoning between aeronautical and non-aeronautical and give it to the responsibility of the authority and let them handle it with certainly with input from the three parties adjacent to it, that be Traverse City, East Bay, and Garfield. I like the board makeup that's been presented. There could be people arguing a different way, but I'd be very comfortable with that. And that was another part of the discussion, and I think we've addressed that. It should be reasonable to all parties to go forward with that. The question of eminent domain had a lot of discussion. That's been addressed. The two counties expressed concerns in that regard, and that's been addressed by saying that both Leelanau and Grand Traverse would be able to step in. I guess lastly was the slide that mentioned at the onset of the discussion, the simplicity of cleaning up some of these deficiencies. I'm going to have to take the attorney's guidance on this, that if it's an authority, you can streamline the process for whatever reason. I don't understand the legality of it. So if it's an authority, it just seems to be able to be cleaner than with a commission. And if you look at the gross savings on that, it's approaching $1 million savings just on the 19 deficiencies that have been noted here. So I say, I'll just in wrapping up, I came into this as a skeptic in terms of going to an authority, sat through all the conversations, the back and forths on it. And just to remind everyone, when we came out of discussion, the Interact committee that sat in on that were unanimous in our recommendation going to an authority. I don't know where we'll go with this meeting. I certainly, with trying to get members of this board and in total agreement, 7 members of the Leelanau board, ain't going to happen. But I will certainly support moving forward and pretty much taking the framework that's been presented in terms of the authority and the articles of incorporation. So I just want to give you my concluding 2 cents worth on that. Thank you.
Commissioner DeYoung.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Tony's question on the land discrepancies and the issues. And I think Commissioner LaPointe just pointed it out. They have to be addressed, whether we stay a commission or whether we go to an authority. Under the authority model, there is a streamlined process that allows it to go through at a much less expensive and more efficient process. Under a commission model, it really falls on all three parties to figure out how best to solve those discrepancies, how best to pay for those, basically pay for all of that and get that taken care of. The FAA is going to make us do it one way or the other. We have to solve the discrepancies. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that it's not something we can just keep putting off. It's something we are going to have to address.
Thank you. Commissioner Solis Little.
Yes, thank you. Patricia Sotis Little, District 5, Leelanau. Doug, if I can follow up with you on that, just so that I clearly understand when we're looking, that's a tremendous change in dollars in terms of looking at that chart of the 19 and the savings. Are we talking out-of-pocket costs? Are we talking streamlining the process in terms of having to avoid boards and commissions hearing things in man-hours tied up with those kinds of processes that government would need to go through? I just am trying to see, are you talking about it's going to save us dollars from a lawyer, or, for example, or are we talking about the process?
A little bit of both. The FAA will look at the process a little bit differently if we're moving over to an authority model, and they have, it's really the FAA's process streamlined, which will definitely save on our side, all of us, the costs that are involved in the legal costs and other costs that may have to be involved. There could be survey costs. There could be a number of things that fall into line here. Engineering costs. There could be consultant costs. There could be a number of things that fall into line. So what we're really talking about is the FAA's process and going through their process.
Commissioner DeYoung, if I could add a little bit to that. An example would be Grand Traverse County Road Commission has a drainage easement on the airport currently for drainage off of Garfield. That easement was basically written as is and accepted by both parties. To resolve it under the commission model, we would then need to do an appraisal of that land, establish fair market value, and actually go back to the Grand Traverse County Road Commission and seek reimbursement of that easement. The difference is under a authority model, the FAA is more willing to accept the easement as written. Because all that process was done before, survey, legal definitions and everything else was done as is, under an authority model, then we wouldn't have to pursue, typically, and I won't say always, but typically going to an authority model or change in governments would give us that clean start or fresh start, recognizing the easement written as is. So that could be an example to kind of explain what may happen in working with a particular easement.
Commissioner Lautner.
Yes, Commissioner Lautner, District 7, Leelanau County. Under the deficiencies, there's number 18, Oakwood. What is that about?
Cemetery.
I know it's a cemetery. Look into. Is it a problem just because there's a cemetery next to the airport, or why are you not looking at moving the cemetery, are you?
No, I can answer that. There is no particular navigation easement to protect approach to that runway. When the city owned the airport prior to forming the original airport commission in the 70s, the city owned both the cemetery and the airport. So therefore, the FAA looked at the city had total control to protect the approach. But when the city when the city went out to create the first commission and then left the commission in the 90s, that approach did not have, or the proper navigation easements were not put in place because the city ownership left. The city is tied to it going back to the original grants. However, there should be a navigation easement in place to ensure the protection of that approach. And that's mainly for any objects that could grow or impact that approach, whether it be a light pole, etc.
Within the cemetery itself?
That would be correct.
I can't believe that would cost $500,000 just to get that.
That's estimated on the appraisal discussion that we've had with consultants for what a navigation easement would cost.
To the city of Traverse City itself?
That would be that would be correct.
Wow, that still surprises me.
The entire cost of the navigation easement that would go to the city wouldn't be 517. That would be the cost of obtaining it. A portion of the 517 is the just compensation that would be paid to the city.
I find it hard to believe that the city would charge for that, but.
Commissioner Hensel.
I have Commissioner Hundley wishes to speak.
Thank you. And I'll put my hand down, yeah. So is this discussion of the appraisal and fair market value, is that absolutely, by statute, these things must be done? Or, I mean, is there a world where if the city or whoever owned these things just wanted to say, okay, great, well, that's what it would be, but or do they have no power to just go ahead and grant the easement?
Well, they could do it for free if they wanted to, or $1. But, well, actually, I don't know, because, you can't, well, it is a public purpose. So yeah, I mean, they could consider giving it to us. And then, if you want to talk to them about it, that'd be great.
Okay.
Any other questions here? Commissioner Ansari.
We had the discussion about privatization, and I don't want to get into it in any great depth, but whether we stay as a commission or move to an authority, there is the option of assigning the airport as a private lease to somebody else. And that process has happened in other locations. It doesn't happen a lot in the United States, but it does happen. And that's why I feel it is critical that we address the dissolution article in the event that some future boards of the authority or the county boards elects to go the privatization route. The FAA does have a program where they forgive all those grants and you don't have to pay them back. And that program, they even have grant money available to help you apply to do the privatization process. And they will give you up to $750,000 just to apply to privatize. And every case that has gone to conclusion, they have forgiven those grants when you privatize. So don't make the assumption that some future board, either authority or the county boards through the commission, may not want to privatize. And if they choose to do so, it's not an easy process. I'll be the first to admit that. It's a 3 or 4 year process to work its way through. But if they do that, we have to have that dissolution article fleshed out for that case. So I don't want to close the door for some future board that they elect to go that route. It's a long route to go, but it could be done. And then in that case, the FAA does grant exemptions that you don't have to pay that money back all the way back to the 30s or 40s or whatever it happens to be. So I'm not saying that we want to go through that process now. I think we need to resolve the governance structure, but I don't want to close the door to some future board saying, hey, maybe we're going to look at this and we want to get some of our money out of this and sign a long-term lease with somebody else. So I do think, even though there's you don't see it as a very reasonable proposition today, there is a FAA program to do that, and I think we need to flesh out that dissolution article. That's my 2 cents. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Mr.
No, Commissioner Answer, you're absolutely right. That dissolution article can be easily flushed out. To explain that more, under the grant assurances, there's an outlined process that Carrie can include on how to dissolve an airport per the regulation. So I think that would clarify exactly what you're looking for, and it's almost word for word from the regulations. So I think that's a great point you made, and I think it can be clarified in that paragraph easily.
Commissioner Coffey, I have a follow-up question to that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, that is important information, but it didn't come from the committee that studied this, and I guess I'm wondering why. That feels pretty relevant. Ms. Zeitz actually cited, that the FAA would probably take most of that money back in terms of grants and such, and yet it sounds like that's not necessarily the case. So I'm a little confused as to why the committee who was assigned to look into this did not share that information, and Mr. Ansorgi had to be the one to share it, and he's not on that committee. Can somebody help me understand?
I'll be happy to address it, and then any of the committee members, if you'd like, please. We did discuss privatization as one of the options for governance. We vetted it through the process, and basically, as we went through that presentation, 12 airports out of the thousands of airports entered the process. 9 withdrew their application. 1 airport entered the process and then went to the private side, felt that the process or the private entity didn't work, and went back to an authority model. Another airport, which is an airport in Puerto Rico, stayed a private, had multiple other issues besides governance that led it to the private. It is working on that today. And then there's a small general aviation airport in Florida that recently, and not really a comparable situation, because that one was bought by a company to use the airport for a cargo operation, its own cargo operation. And so it's like buying a plant for its operation. So the private model has been looked at, extensively, and is one that is not favored, but it is an option. It was created as an option in the Appropriations Act back in, I think it was 1997. And so it was discussed. There are different criteria for that. I know Commissioner Ansorgi says there's a forgiveness of grants. I would have to verify that. I don't have that information to verify that statement, but there is some ability to navigate that process and negotiate with that through that privatization program.
So,
Commissioner Coffey, any other questions about that?
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner DeYoung.
yeah, I just want to add on to that. We did extensively look at privatization. There's a number of factors that came up in regards to privatization that we wanted to understand and make sure that everybody here understands. Number one, there was a factor of accountability. If you privatize the airport, you have all stated you want some accountability to the residents of the communities. You want some accountability. If the airport becomes a private entity, it no longer is accountable as a basically a asset of the community. It's more of a private business operating, and so that was one of the things we looked at and discussed. The other thing I think should be pointed out, that future operation of the airport, you lose the opportunity for a number of grants and a number of funds that come back from the federal government when you privatize. So you are really reduced in a lot of your operation and expansion or redoing of runways, all of those things, all those grants, that process changes dramatically. And so you don't have that ability to go to the federal government for that, which includes the type of air travel you're getting in here and the access that we're seeing. Because one of the things we also heard from public comment is that they like the fact that they have access, direct flights to Dallas, direct flights to Denver, direct flights. When you look at some of the smaller airports that are privatized, and I go to Branson as one of the examples, they struggle year in and year out to get airlines in there because they don't have the grant assurances that we have and other airports our size have. So it was looked at. It is a complex issue, and it is a complex process, as Commissioner Ansorgi pointed out.
Okay, I'd like to move on then to the number C of new business, and we have the discussion with Nate Alger here from Grand Rapids County Administrator. Available, Nate?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about this. What we obviously have been involved in for quite a while is this discussion, and we have answered, in my opinion, we have answered many questions from both public and the commissioners. The AGAC report to the commissioners last year in detail, including the options, and we met with this discussion to get to a point where the county can move and take a direction. And I guess what I'm looking for, I'm sorry, I leave further, after the input sessions and after the discussion with the Board of Commissioners independently, we went to Kent County, we talked to them about their experience with the movement to an authority, and overwhelmingly that move was successful and achieved the ends they were hoping to achieve. You gave them questions specifically about the questions that our commissions had, and felt very comfortable in the responses that Kent County gave us that, they had not changed things with their authority or with their model, and that we were on the right track in doing what they thought was an appropriate process. I would like to suggest that the boards individually discuss the resolution to form regional airport authority, so we can either move forward or take a different direction with the commission. But I know this is a study session, we can't vote, but I have some type of an acknowledgement that we can go in one direction or the other. Chet?
Well, just to follow up on Mr. Alger's comment, I think it's important to know that Mr. Alger and I sat in every one of those meetings for the task force that was forced to look at options, and then Mr. Alger and I and Mr. Klein met on a regular basis from January through March. As Mr. Alger pointed out, we did go to Grand Rapids, talk to those people. The feedback we got from the public, we reviewed that. There were some rumors there about what occurred at the Grand Rapids airport that we quickly dispelled. Were not factual. And then with the shutdown, we actually put everything on hold. But since September, we've been meeting almost on a weekly basis. And I think the key is on this article of incorporation, we're not asking you to say yes or no. You asked us to come up with a draft as a starting point. So we try to take all the comments from Grand Traverse County, from Leelanau, and we did our best attempt to draft articles of incorporation. The key thing, the big letter that says it's draft. These are certainly open up, but we felt you needed something to start with. So we're not, I think I speak for Mr. Klein, Mr. Elger and I, we're not saying this is what we're recommending for you. You asked us to come up with draft articles. We did our best to take all of your comments, your questions, concerns, and come up with a draft document that you can look at, and then from there go forward. So I think that's where we're at. Obviously, this is just a study session. I think there are a lot of great questions that came forward, and I think Mr. Klein is going to talk about maybe next steps. But I know Mr. Eljon, I would appreciate getting your feedback and comments, even today, what your questions are, thoughts. So I'm assuming we're gonna put this on the November agenda, but any questions that you have before then, if you could address those to me or to Mr. Elger, then we could try to come back with that. So really we can move forward. I know part of our 2020 goals that the board approved was to resolve this by the end of the year. We'd like to accomplish that goal, which I think is doable. So we still have a couple of months, but we really need your feedback on how to proceed.
Thank you. So that would bring us then to the next step. Mr. Klein.
Certainly, if I can do the share screen function. Hold on one moment.
You should be able to share.
You should be able to. I think you have to click on it.
Okay, let me get back there, okay? And
there.
Hold on then. All right. So the next step is a timeline. If we look at a schedule for creating a regional airport authority, we'll start on the left side, the study session. The next step would be a resolution of intent from each county to form a regional airport authority. Then in that resolution per statute, it requires the requirement of a public hearing. So a public hearing would have to be held based on what those articles of incorporation would look like. And that would have to happen at each county. So each county would have to hold their own public hearing. And that the intent of following what Mr. Janik just said is to get that to be about the December timeframe. Once that is completed, the public hearing is completed and any changes, then those articles would be brought forth to both counties to be approved to stand up the authority. And then they would be filed with the state of Michigan at that time. And we would enter a process then that would appoint an authority board. Typically, you appoint the current members of the commission, and then, of course, the additional members as outlined, to begin moving forward and having kind of dual boards so that all of the transfers can take place with the operating certificate that's required from the FAA and resolve those and having that application resolved, submitted in March and resolved by May to transfer from the commission to the authority. Any questions on that? Okay.
Hey, Kevin, we add just one element of this conversation. You don't have to go too far back in our year here to identify a significant financial impact on our counties. When the pandemic hit, the airport suffered significantly. There were significant revenue questions, and Kevin and I had some pretty direct conversations about revenue, about expenditures, how the airport could or could not be funded. And until the airport received a significant CARES package, the county was looking at potentially its first allocation to the airport in more than 15 years. I am concerned a little bit about the liability end of this as well. And I think that we should not wait too long before we start making moves. And in my opinion, if we can get a straw poll from at least Grand Traverse Board to get some type of a direction that I can take with either, I would.
Commissioner LaPointe?
No, I think that was directed to the chair to perhaps.
All right.
Take a straw poll.
Well, I guess,
Well, I mean, I think we would, at this point, if there's no questions for Kevin, then we would move on to the public comment, and then we can get the commissioner's comments about the process and what he talked about. If that'd be all right, I'd like to go through that and just announce for public comment. So for Leelanau County or anyone really, if they wanted to call in, it's 231-256-8109. 231-256-8109 if they wanted to make any public comment. Chairman Henschel, if you wanted to do that for Grand Traverse County.
I'm sorry, do what?
Just ask for public comment, for Grand Traverse, they can either call in on that same number or however.
Harold Lasser's on still. He's a county resident. Anyone in Grand Traverse County like to make any public comment? Bruce Moore is also on. Go ahead and unmute and speak up if you have a comment.
I have no comment.
Thanks, Harold.
This is Bruce Moore. I have nothing for public comment.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Anybody I'm not seeing on the list? Just unmute and let me know. Seeing none, back to you.
Commissioner DeYoung, if you wanted to ask for the airport authority or.
Yes, under the airport commission, does anyone have any public comment? And I would ask the commissioners to check their emails again to see if any public comment was submitted.
Mr. DeYoung, I noticed Mr. Travis was on. If he would have any public comment. Luann, Zach is on if she would have any public comment. And I believe those that are the ones that I recognize under what I would call a roll call.
I'll pass, thank you.
Luann?
Comment.
Okay, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Then that would bring us then to the commissioner comments. Are there any comments from commissioners at this time?
Well, actually, we're hoping we can go one by one and ask their thoughts or comments, which way they'd like to go, if they wish to express their views.
So Commissioner Sudas Little, and that's, I guess we're hoping to see which way you'd like to go, but if it's not a vote, it's just kind of a consensus.
Well, you have certainly addressed a lot of the concerns that I had, and I want to thank you very much for the work that's gone into that, both of our two county administrator, but also to you, Carrie, and the authority, the commission board. You're not an authority yet. I am more comfortable leaning towards an authority than I was before. I know that a lot of folks in my district have a lot of concern about this, but a lot of their concern really came from the area of eminent domain and also transparency. So I think you've done a good job of addressing that. I think Tony, Commissioner Ansorgi's comments in terms of what happens if the authority is dissolved or taken over by a private entity, it's decided to go that way, should be included. But I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Commissioner Rettenbach.
Yeah, I applaud the work that's been done in the past that's taken us to this point today. I am in favor of an authority. I think that the due diligence shows that's the way to go. We need to have a little bit of discussion to nail down some of the articles of incorporation, but I hope to be able to continue in that direction. Thank you.
Commissioner Wessel.
Yes, Ty Wessel, I concur with what's been said already. I'm leaning toward being very interested in it. I would like to make sure that I understand better the cost savings part of it. I still don't understand that clearly enough. And I do want further discussion on on how we ensure that the board, the authority board would be representative, and we can have that conversation as we talk details later. Thank you.
Commissioner Ansori?
I was probably the biggest skeptic up here in Leelanau County as far as moving to an authority. You know, we had the consultant come up here and, you know, oh, it's going to be much more efficient and stuff. And come to find out, those airports that are operating as an authority today aren't as efficient as our airport. We are currently under the commission status, and it's a very well-run airport. But in looking at some of the problems that can be resolved, specifically with zoning, and I want some more information on the cost differential here. I'm still not convinced that it's as great as it is, but there may be some cost savings by using the authority. So I have come around, but I will want some more massaging on the authority articles.
Mr. Law?
Well, this is a very complex issue. We've read a lot about it. We've come to understand a lot about it. Sometimes I think an authority makes a lot of sense, and then other times I'm just not so sure about an authority. And, you know, coming in here today, I thought, you know, it probably makes the most sense. But after everything we've heard today, I still have a lot of the same reservations I had, so I am not in favor of an authority at this time. I'd like to research further the possibility of staying with the commission, but making some changes that we have to clean up some of these things, or doing some kind of a hybrid, potentially. But I'm not in favor of the authority today.
Mr. Rushton?
Well, I want to say that actually, Tony, I was the biggest skeptic when we first got started with this. My first concern was being able, an authority being able to tax our citizens without input. And so that was my first concern. Once I learned a little bit more about Act 95, I came to realize that the authority does not have that power under that act. So once that was out of the way for me, I began to open up and look at and listen to the pros and the cons as far as an authority. And my position today is that the authority model, I believe, will be able to act more efficiently and provide the citizens of our community with an asset that will enhance economic growth to our community and provide that leisure travel that people all over northern Michigan look forward to. I'm very proud of the work that the airport, the different parties have engaged in, provided for, and brought this to both boards. I think each board may have a little bit more housekeeping to do on small details, but I think we can resolve those in our own committee meetings or commission meetings and be ready for a decision. So thank you to everybody, and I look forward to moving forward.
And I guess I would say that I was skeptical, but I am in favor of authority, and for all the reasons that have been discussed. So then, with that, I will turn it over to Chairman Hensel for the Grand Traverse Board.
I'll just go first, and then I'll go through the list. At the end of the day, when I volunteered for the assignment of airport commissioner, 22. Really, what's on my mind, what's best for our community is cheaper flights. It's always been like the back of my mind, whenever we make a decision at the airport, what leads us to cheaper flights? And what I see working is economic development, things like Costco at the airport, which, when it went in, I was skeptical of it, but now I see it's working. It's paying its rent, it's paying taxes to the city, taxes to the county, and it's paying rent to the airport, providing extra revenue for cheaper flights. We can keep the costs to the air carriers lower, and we can keep the airport nicer because of that extra revenue. And I think the authority model leads to more economic development. It's more agile for us to continue economic development, and I'll lean towards that. I don't like everything that we've talked about in the articles, but I've also learned that I don't always get everything I want. And it's just, part of working on a board, and especially working in a cross-county collaboration like this. I've come to be very fond of Leelanau County's partnership at the airport and the outside perspective. It's not just one county or just one small area looking at it, but it helps us look at it more regionally. So I do want to say I'm grateful that Leelanau is part of our airport. And at the same time, I share Commissioner Klaus's concerns about the representation. Somebody needs to be muted. At the end of the day, I think the authority model gets us in the direction of cheaper flights, and I don't see any huge downsides to it. I think we still have good representation. We're still going to be responsive to the residents in the area, but also we're going to be responsive to the region as our customer. So those are my thoughts. And with that, I will go to Commissioner Klaus.
I'll be short on it. I am in favor of the authority and just the liability to both counties. It'll shed us the liability so long as we don't bond with full faith and credit.
Go to Commissioner Hundley next.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for all the work, and thanks to the folks at the airport for having what is, undeniably a great airport for any size, and certainly for our size. So the pros and cons, I guess, if we're straw polling, I suppose on the fence, which isn't helpful to you. Maybe I would lean still toward the commission, and here's why. My pros and cons of the authority would be the very clear pro of the authority model is limiting the liability to the counties, and that is not insignificant. I definitely respect that, and it's weighing in the balance here. And then it also seems like the authority model in general will make it easier for the airport to do what it wants to do on behalf of the airport. The concern I have really is that the airport, as great as it is almost in the middle of my city. Like I was saying about the map, I mean, the restrictions imposed by the FAA, I know, but by having that airport where it is, basically quite really limits anything that we can do. I mean, in some way limits everything that we can do in my entire hometown. And so with that, my fear is by giving it to an authority, whatever authority, if you set up a separate entity that will pursue its own interests, whoa, hello. When the balance of the interests between the authority and, something, residents directly in my community, the authority would, on balance, presumably operate in its own interest. And I wouldn't blame it for that, but that's why I'm reluctant to necessarily give it that authority. That's all I've got to say. Thanks. But I could be swayed. That's all I've got to say.
Okay. Thank you for your open mind. Commissioner Kafia. Are you there?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I share some of Mr. Hunley's concerns, and I also, the mention was made of making decisions that are in the public interest, and I do share that, but I see it a little bit differently because I've been thinking about my district. Literally, the east side of the city butts directly up against the airport, and so any decisions around development, et cetera, and then there are folks in the surrounding townships who are also right up next to the airport. And so I've always been trying to figure out what is the best path forward that makes sure that the airport acts both in its smart best interest, but also as the best neighbor possible. And I still have some concerns and reservations. While I do appreciate all of the work that this committee has put in, and I appreciate the responsiveness to the public's concerns about things like eminent domain. So I'm still kind of on the fence while still willing to keep an open mind. I want to make sure that Ms. Zeitz does come back to us with the answer as to whether, like the elected road commission in Leelanau County, whether the airport authority board could in fact be popularly elected. And that would give me some peace of mind to know that there was some direct line of accountability. I'm familiar, the more layers of government you get in there, the less sometimes access and accountability, there is to the public. So those are a couple of concerns I have, but again, appreciate all of the work that's gone in and the responsiveness to concerns around eminent domain. So I'm open-minded, but I still have those concerns, and I want us to always have a mind towards the people who live directly around that airport, with the noise and the commercial development and the incentive to develop to make revenue for the airport's bottom line doesn't always coincide nicely with somebody who lives with their backyard as an airport. So those are my thoughts.
Good. Yeah, I think it's been several months since we've obviously been able to meet and everything. I think today was very beneficial to hear Leelanau County's thoughts, everything. Personally, I think the advantages of going to an authority definitely outweigh the disadvantage. I do feel that we have some work to do on the articles of incorporation, but I do believe that we can get there. So, I'll just keep it short and sweet, but as of right now, would be in favor of an authority. Commissioner LaPointe.
I am not on the fence. I am firmly in favor of an authority after spending about a year and a half of going through this. I think it was a good idea to come up with a straw man in terms of the articles of incorporation, and I thought the staff did a great job putting that together, addressing a lot of the points that have been raised. I thought there's some additional questions that came up that they can go back now and modify it and perhaps enhance it. But I think it's a good framework. I think it's all of the main issues that have been discussed with some fine tuning. I think we can get this thing done. I think it's 11 pages now. Hopefully won't add too much to it, keep it simple. And so as I said earlier, I support it, and hopefully we can go forward and get this thing off and take the next step.
That's all of us. Back to you, Leelanau.
Yes, Commissioner DeYoung, did you want to talk with the airport board about it, or have any comments on it?
Well, at this point, the articles of incorporation are really in the hands of both of your boards. So I would just say thank you for today, and thank you for the opportunity today to really go through this and really have some deep discussions. I think it really lays out some of the concerns that are still on the table that need to be addressed, but also some of the ideas for, the still having local control of your airport and still having the ability to manage the airport as a business in the community. And I think that's really important as we move forward. I'll just open it up. Are there any airport commissioners who'd like to make any other comments at this time? Great. Hearing none, thank you. Back to you.
All right. So with that, then I would conclude this meeting with an adjournment. by Leelanau County at least. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned as well. Thank you.
Thank
We
you
are
very
adjourned.
much.
We are adjourned as well. Thank you.